Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Alistair Gold. You well?
Yeah, I am actually. Hope you are too. Yeah, since the last pod, we had two new signings for the first team, a load of them for the under 21s, two wins, two clean sheets, 5 goals scored. It's not big. Maybe we should take longer pauses between pods. Good stuff seems to happen when we wait a while. Yeah, it gives us loads to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, so this one might be the last pod of the season then, if we're going to do that, if they keep winning.
Unbeaten streak from to the end of the season if we did that.
Yeah, but it has been a really, really good week. Not only, like you said, in terms of the results, but in terms of the transfers as well, because Tottenham went into the final week of the window, desperate for new signings. Fans have been waiting since the 1st of January for a new centre-back to come in, for a new attacker to come in, and finally, last 2 days of the window, Kevin Danso has joined on loan initially from Lens in France. There's an obligation to purchase him in the summer, so he'll become a permanent Tottenham player from next season onwards. And then Mathys Tel has joined on loan from Bayern Munich, and there's an option to purchase him in there. And Tel's a really, really exciting young player, and I think it's one everyone's thankful managed to get it over the line after they appeared to turn them down a week ago when there was a permanent move on the agenda. But they finally got the man, and Postecoglou playing quite a key role in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Spurs took their time. It's I can absolutely understand the questions, and we've been saying it enough on this podcast. Why kind of that hasn't why these could it, either of these been pushed through earlier in the window, with a little bit more oomph. We don't know, but they're here. thank goodness, because they need the bodies, they need the legs, and to be fair, they're two players that should fit the system really, really well. In Danso, you've got someone who's strong, powerful, fast, good on the ball. He's kind of got all of the Postecoglou elements, and he's also a classic Postecoglou player in that he's dropped down the leagues and had to fight his way back up again, which just seems to be a characteristic that Postecoglou loves. He loves people that don't take anything for granted, and just kind of have this fighting instinct within them. So he's hopefully going to be a terrific signing, and also not a teenager. He kind of breaks the rule. Him and Solanke, the two that have been signed this season who aren't teenagers, and he's got a bit of experience, across different leagues, and just kind of a little bit of English experience as well, especially when he was young. And yeah, with Tell, well, it's been a roller coaster. It's fair to say. What were we 3-4 days before the window closed, and it looked like it was all done and dusted. Really, that he was not going to come to Spurs. Indications that he could either stay at Bayern or that he would be heading elsewhere, and perhaps with Man United as a preference. And then, yeah, Big Ange gets involved, gets on the phone, has a lengthy chat with him. I think, to be fair, I think other options kind of started to drop away, which helped Spurs. I was kind of told the night before deadline day that they were back in and around the situation. And then, yeah, Ange has his chat with him, and I guess just convinces him that you're going to get a lot of game time, you're going to develop, you're going to be playing football that you're going to love. Look at my kind of attacking players. They're all in double figures up front there. Sonny, Johnson, and Solanke have all in double figures when it comes to goals. And also, if he has to play as a winger, people from Germany, the logic or the thinking is that he would probably prefer to be central as a striker more than a winger. But he probably would have pointed out to him, even if you play on the wing for me, you're going to be getting in the box and you're going to be scoring goals. Brendan Johnson is Spurs' top goal scorer. So yeah, an interesting one. And then we've got the option. The option itself is an interesting thing. Obviously, reports from Germany that is one where the player has an element of control over it as well, which isn't unusual. Kind of speaking to people involved in kind of contracts and things like this for players across various clubs and stuff. Apparently, it's often the player does have a deciding kind of you can't just be just told what you're doing and where you're going and stuff like that. They will have the opportunity to kind of have their say on it. However, from what I understand, within Spurs, there's a confidence that if they decide to take up the option in the summer, then it will all go through, and he's agreed to this long-term deal, which I think it's 6 years in all. So it's kind of all set up there and ready to go. But yes, of course, he'll have a say on his destination in the summer. But you would imagine if all goes well, he plays well, he's happy, then everyone will be happy.
I've not seen many of these deals before where there's an option and the contract's already been agreed. I thought it'd always be one of these, right, we'll activate that option, then we'll agree on a long-term deal or whatever. But yeah, if Spurs can get Tel on a 6-year deal in the summer, then it could be a really good move. And I mean, if ever a player's umming and ahhing over a move to Spurs, then you just send Danso Postecoglou in. He just gets the job done. I mean, he just has like this aura about him, and you just like hang on his every word. Really, we've seen videos of his team talks before when he's been in charge of Australia, and I mean, you just run through a brick wall for Ange, and you can understand why the likes of, I mean, Drăgușin could have gone to Bayern Munich, Maddison could have gone to Newcastle, Bergvall to Barcelona, Tel could have gone elsewhere, but Ange comes in and just convinces them that Tottenham is the right place for them to be. So it's a really exciting signing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Danso gets on, especially after his initial time in the Premier League with Southampton in the 2019-20 season. Did actually play against Tottenham in the FA Cup that year, and there's actually a really, really good interview with Rising Ballers. It's about an hour long, and he sits down and basically talks about his time in the Premier League with Southampton and another loan spell with Fortuna Düsseldorf, and basically why it went wrong for him at Southampton, because he basically said he started really, really well, and then he just took his foot off the gas. And I think in the end he played 10 games that season, went to Fortuna Düsseldorf the following season, and he mentioned that they'd played, I think it was Wurzburger Kickers in the league. Yeah. This is Bundesliga 2.
Have you got one of their shirts? You normally have the kind of an array of football shirts.
I've not.
But not a Wurzburger Kickers one?
Not yet, anyway. But basically, we've said just going to play at Wurzburger Kickers Stadium was like a massive wake-up call for him. And then after that, I think he was man of the match in 30% of Dusseldorf's games after that. And that led to his move to Lond and then to Tottenham. And Danso's not going to take this move to Spurs for granted at all. He'll be keeping his foot on the gas and, looking to become a first-team regular. So 2, I think, really good signings. I'd probably just say it's a shame they didn't come through the door a bit earlier, but at least Spurs have got them in, because it could have ended quite differently, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those. It's a strange window in that maybe like previous ones where you kind of appreciate what was done seems to be good eventually. However, you can also see where there's areas that it could have been much better, and that would be getting players in early, and also I think a second centre back. With what we're going to talk about with Radu Drăgușin as well, and his ACL injury, and I mean, look, I guess that's the case with all football clubs. You kind of want more than was actually done, but they are too. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about Kinski. We've spoken about him at length and how he's really kind of going to be, hopefully, an excellent goalkeeper going forward. But in Danso and Tel, they do have 2 players that I think are going to bring so much to the team as well. And that's the key thing, is that Postecoglou was very keen on not just getting people in for the sake of it to fill spaces in the squad and bolster it. He actually wanted people that could make quite a big contribution for the team. And to be fair, I think probably a lot of people did expect just short-term loans, whereas, yes, they are both coming on loans, but they're both ones with a view to something more permanent after it. Yeah, I agree. I think Danso will be really interesting. I think he'll be hopefully forged by those early experiences in England. I think that will be a really important thing for him, and kind of coming back and knowing exactly that. I can't take my foot off the pedal here. This is the biggest league in the world, really the most fast and physical league in the world. And with Tel, it's all there for him. This is one of the most kind of talented young players probably in the European game right now in terms of of attackers, and it just hasn't worked for him under Vincent Kompany. Under Tuchel last season, it looked like he was going to be one of the stars, and I actually completely forgot until I kind of looked it up. I saw him take on Spurs with Rennes in the Conference League out in France, and someone said I think he was also involved in the pre-season friendly. So I think I've seen him a couple of times in the flesh.
He played in both. First one in Korea, he set up Leon Goretzka for Bayern's second goal, and then in the game the following week at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, he had a header save from Vicario from Kimmich's free kick, and then Upamecano put the ball in the net. And last week, when there was all this talk about Tel, I went back and had a quick look at the highlights of both of those games, and yeah, looked really sharp, physical player, likes to cut in onto his right foot from the left wing. I think it's a really good signing, to be honest. I think you'd struggle to make a better signing in the January transfer window in terms of the attackers, especially bringing someone in on loan.
Yeah, and you look at the kind of the caliber of the clubs that were looking at him and trying to get him away from there, and eventually couldn't. Yeah, it's a great one. It's hopefully it'll develop nicely at Spurs, and yeah, it becomes a more permanent deal. And yeah, he's going to increase the competition up front. What I would say about the two players is that neither of them have played a lot of football recently. It's good in one respect because Spurs need fresh bodies that aren't absolutely drained and fatigued. But on the other hand, Danso has played, I think, one game in about 6 weeks, something like that, when you look at it all with the winter break as well, because he hasn't played the last 3 games for long. And Tel, it's kind of roughly similar, but he hasn't been starting. He's had sub appearances as well. So there's not a lot of game time in their legs. But hey, that could be a good thing for Spurs. It just means they probably have to get a little bit sharp beforehand. Not like it's a big week or anything with 2 massive cup games that might be thrown in for.
Andrew always throws the new signings in.
He does.
Did it with Mickey van der Ven, Wilson Odebear as well. So
Kinski, yep.
Yeah, may well see both of them start Anfield on Thursday night. Just in terms of the transfer window then, what score would you give it out of 10?
Oh, you didn't even pre-warn me you're going to ask for a mark. I would give it, let's do it as old school rating kind of things, B pluses, C's and D's and all that rather than number. I'm going to go for, I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to go B minus because I think, as I said, I think the quality of what they brought in has been good. All 3 signings, and it is the busiest window they've had since 2008-9 season under Harry Redknapp, when they brought in like 5 players that included Defoe, Keane, Palacios, Cudicini, Chimbonda. It was like that one where he essentially came in, Redknapp, and said, "I need everything," and they kind of gave it to him. Whereas, yeah, I think what a contrast to the one where he got Saha and Nelson, where he kind of just needed the finishing touches. But yeah, all these years on, they've never done since then 3 transfers in a January window. So for that, absolutely deserves some credit, and the quality of the players deserves some credit. But I can't get away from the fact that kind of feels like the damage was already done in the Premier League over the 4 weeks or so before that, where they I saw the Johan Langer interview where he was talking about how, we had stuff in place. We were ready to go on January the 1st, but they didn't. It's all very well kind of having your plans, but you should be able to push something through in an outfield sense within those first 4 weeks, surely. So for that reason, I'm going B minus, just purely because so much damage was done to the squad before they got those players in the door.
Yeah, I'll give it a B. I think when you look at it on paper, it's a decent window. Bringing in Kinski, Tel and Danso, certainly fixing some positions that needed to be addressed. But then again, should have been in earlier. And I think probably could have done with another centre-back, really. But just one of those things, you're not going to fix everything in the January transfer window. And having listened to Johan Langer's interview and transcribed it all this morning before
you tell was going to say, you tell everyone what happened just after you'd finished transcribing it.
Yeah, Tottenham then published the full transcript, which would have been handy, but there we go. It is what it is. He basically outlined that, I think he was saying about 10% of all transfers in the season are done in January. And then in this window, I think there was only 12 Premier League transfers in the first 2 weeks, which shows you the difficulty of it. And again, he mentioned...
But they still managed it, but 12 transfers still went through.
Yeah. But as he mentioned, and Ange has mentioned in his press conferences previously, the new European format has really made things a bit difficult because there's still those last 2 remaining league phase fixtures in January, whereas mid-December, it's done and dusted. Players know if they're going to be involved in Europe from February onwards, and that just wasn't the case this year. But I think a couple of things what he said were interesting, especially on Mathys Tel. Basically said he's got a bit of a X factor that hopefully will bring excitement to the stadium, and they just can't wait really to set him free in the team. Kevin Danso as well mentioned that he's got a bit of a big personality, which could play a huge factor in the dressing room. Kinski as well, he said, scouted him about 10 or 12 times before bringing forward the move, because he was someone that we're going to look at signing in the summer, but because of Vicario's injury, brought the plans forward. Then also what he said about the loan players was quite interesting. I didn't actually realise that they will look at bringing the loan players back to the club a couple of times during the season, just to get them back into the environment and just speak to them, etc. as well, which was quite interesting. And he mentioned that the loan moves for Will Lancashire, Luca Gunte, Yang-Min Hook, good for their development, and then they'll be back in the summer looking to make their impact. So bit of a long interview from Johan Lang, a few good bits in there, I think.
Wouldn't want to transcribe all of that.
Well, you would have done if you were working yesterday, wouldn't you?
I might have waited just a couple of minutes.
Right. Away from that then, Ange Postecoglou and the club have a big decision to make by 11 p.m. on Wednesday evening. That's in terms of the 25-man Europa League squad, or in Tottenham's case, a 23-man squad, just because they don't have those 4 club-trained players. So rules stipulate you can make 3 changes to your playing squad from the league phase going into the knockout phase. Tottenham have 5 players in the running, probably 4 players, because Sergio Reguilon's not really going to be under consideration when there's Anthony Kinski, Kevin Danso, Mathys Tel, and Jed Spence in the mix as well. So 3 of those 4 can be selected. Easy decision, is it?
It's not an easy one. It's weird that we've come back so quickly. It feels like round to the Europa League squad and the issues with that. I got the press conference later, which I'm sure Ange is waiting for me to ask some kind of question on that, because he knows it's like a weird thing that we have to constantly look over. I should stress to people straight off the bat, Premier League squad's absolutely fine. There's no issues with that with the new signings. They all fit in with absolute room to spare because of the Premier League. It's such a simple difference between the two, is that the Premier League squad has the under-21s list that makes no difference where you're from, how long you've been at the club. You can be on this under-21s list, and that frees up so much space in the squad. Whereas all of those teenage players that Spurs have bought, unfortunately, in the Europa League, all count as like foreign signings, association trade signings. They don't really make any kind of... They all have to be factored in. So yes, they've now got far too many to fit in. And like you say, in essence, they can make 3 changes for the knockout stages, but 3 players are going to have to come out because they had no leeway. They already had an overstuffed squad. You would think Danso comes in for Drăgușin. I think that's a straightforward one now. Well, it definitely is a straightforward one now. I would say Kinski you probably leave out. It's a very difficult decision to make, but I think you've probably got enough in Vicario, Austin, and Whiteman to go forward with there. And there's a goalkeeper rule you were having a little look at earlier, isn't there, about if you lose a couple of goalkeepers in an absolute emergency or something?
Yeah, basically, if a club cannot count on the services of at least 2 goalkeepers registered on the list A, then you can make a temporary change. But I think it was saying it's if you're losing goalkeepers to long-term injury or illness, and it reads like these long-term injury or illness have to be at least 30 days.
Right. So what, before the fixture, presumably then?
Something like that. It's Article 31.14 if anyone wants to read through it.
Get looking, people. Get leafing through those rules and regulations.
Yeah, but I think if you can't count on at least 2 goalkeepers, Spurs have 4 on the list currently, so you'd have to lose 3 of them, which shouldn't really happen. But then again, it is Tottenham, so who knows?
Well, absolutely. Any scenario can happen at Tottenham. But yeah, I think you probably leave Kinski out. Then you've got, I think Spence has to come in. I think he's played so well and is so versatile and helpful that you have to get him in there. I would say personally, even though we're talking about the goalkeepers, I'd probably take Forster out for him. I think you could then do a swap there. And like I say, that leaves you with Vicario, Austin and Whiteman as your goalkeepers. And then I think poor old Timo. I think Timo probably has to come out for Tel, because if you're looking at it as a straight winger for winger, I think it kind of has to be, doesn't it? You can't. But I know some might say, "Oh, but Werner's got experience, Champions League winner, everything in Europe. Maybe that's where he'll be at his best." But we haven't seen that. We haven't. We got chewed up by Postecoglou after a Europa League game against Rangers. So I think if you can fit Tel in, maybe it's for Werner. What do you reckon?
If you'd asked me probably 2 weeks ago, I think it'd have been Werner or Odegaard. I'd probably be leaning more towards leaving Odegaard out, just because what Ange had said in his press conferences that it'd be towards the end of the season when Odegaard would be back. But then last week, he sounds like he's going to be back in 10 days or so with a large group of these players. And given Timo's only here probably till the end of the season, unless Spurs want to make it permanent, Odegaard's here for the long-term future. I think you've got to look ahead, and Odegaard stays in. Werner's probably going to be the one most at risk.
That's my thinking with Forster as well. Forster probably is not here going forward beyond the end of the summer.
Maybe if Brandon Austin hadn't played in those 2 Europa League games and the Premier League game against Newcastle, then you'd probably look at bringing Kinski in, I think. But I think there's sufficient cover there now with Vicario coming back very soon. Austin's got a bit of experience under his belt, and then there's Alfie Whiteman as cover.
We should stress Whiteman and Austin are club-trained players, so they're kind of in this little protected bubble within the squad. They don't really count towards the rest.
Yeah, so I think Spencer Forster and then Danso for Drăgușin. But it'll all become clear very soon. As I said, 11 p.m. deadlines.
Probably tomorrow, maybe you'll find out.
The list.
Unless he reveals it today, he might say today in the presser what he'll do. I doubt it, but you never know.
Up to you to force it out of him then.
This is true.
Right, just in terms of Radu Drăgușin then, ACL injury suffered last week in the Elfsborg Europa League fixture. He'd only just come on at half-time as well. I think it was 21 minutes on the pitch. Came on to replace Mickey van der Ven in the pre-planned substitution, just to give Mickey some minutes on the pitch after his long injury layoff, and it looked a bit of an awkward injury as soon as he extended his leg and planted it down. Not the news Spurs want, but it's just their luck, really.
Yeah, it was so weird. Kind of the press box was just above where he did it, and you see with ACLs, we've seen some where they look in the worst pain imaginable. Bentancur it was horrible. You could kind of hear the pain he was going through. Whereas with Drăgușin, it was more of like a kind of a hopping, limping type thing. And they wanted to check it with him and kind of put him through a few little things on the sideline. And it was only when he started to do a little, kind of did some little jumps. I don't think it's some suggestion that they told him to do. I don't know if they did. I thought he just started doing that before he was kind of going to try and run it off. I don't know. It sounds ridiculous when you now know he's got an ACL, but yeah, he was kind of doing his little jumps. And it was on like the third or fourth little jump in the air that he came down and was like, yeah, this isn't right. And then it was weird. They kind of sent him on in order to, I think he kind of walked on so that he could go down and they could stop the game. I presume had they tried and subbed him while he was off the pitch, they would have had the game to continue with 10 men kind of thing. It was a slightly tactical element to it. But yeah, desperately sad for him. Obviously put that really kind of as I say, emotional, but you know, that message on Instagram to everyone, which the club then put out as well, like a long statement about it all. And he is so young, you know, still was he? Oh, actually, it was his birthday, wasn't it? It was his birthday on the day that it all kind of came out. He turned 23, and yeah, he's young enough that hopefully he'll heal quickly, can get back on with things. But we've been in this position before with Spurs players, and we know how long it takes the other side to get back to where you need to be. You know, we've seen it with Bentancur, who looks like he's finally getting back to where he was. And, you know, what we almost 2 years on from it, 18 months on from it. No, wait a minute. That was around this time. 2 years, yeah.
2 years this weekend, I think.
Oh, really? There you go. Yeah. So it kind of shows you how long it takes you to get back into things. And yeah, such a big shame for him. And they did need that other centre back on deadline day. You know, they tried for a few. Mark Gay from Palace, they put in a bid really late on Sunday night, the night before deadline day, which was like felt like a bit like Kinski on a different level of, oh, let's bring forward maybe a summer plan, get it done now if we can. But you know, obviously Palace were going to say, well, who are we going to sign as a replacement at this late stage? And that didn't go through. And there's various other defenders they looked at. And that's my fear now with Drăgușin out, that you are 1 or 2 injuries kind of just from being exactly the same spot they've been in, and Archie Gray having to continue to be a centre-back. It's they definitely feel like they're still a bit short there.
Yeah. Before we get on to last Sunday's 2-0 win at Brentford and also tomorrow night's Carabao Cup semi-final second leg against Liverpool, Ali's gone to explain the benefits of using NordVPN as sponsor.
Yes. Heading to Liverpool on Thursday. I don't think that quite qualifies as heading abroad to a foreign country, but certainly I'll be using my Nord there in different domestic ways. You know, you can use it for security aspects of locking up your phone somewhat when you're using public Wi-Fi and stopping people getting into the device. But it is, as you often hear me say, very, very helpful for when you are heading off abroad or when you're at home. Either way, if you're abroad, you can access stuff back home by making your devices think they're in the UK. Or if you're in the UK, you can make your device think it's in a completely different country, and that may allow you to access different streaming sites, booking sites, anything you might want to do that is easier from the destination country rather than the one you're in. And that might be buying tickets, booking a hotel, it could be anything. And on top of all of that, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world. And that means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. And on top of all of that, if that hasn't enticed you already, you can get the best discount off your NordVPN plan with our exclusive deal if you go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. And our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. And then, as well, on top of all of that, there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.
So, Sunday's 2-0 win at Brentford. I don't think many probably would have had Tottenham down to win in West London. They'd drawn the previous 3 games at the GTEC Community Stadium. Brentford have been really good at home this season as well. I think before Sunday's game, they were 4th in the home table in the Premier League this season. I think they'd only lost 3 games. Spurs, on the other hand, I think maybe won 3 games away, but really, really professional performance from Ange Postecoglou's team, going ahead through that Vitaly Janelt own goal. He knew nothing about that. Just ball hitting him on back and going straight in from Son's corner. Really good delivery from Son. And then Pat Mathys, the substitute, second half. Really nice finish at the near post, putting the ball between the goalkeeper's legs. And such an important win for Spurs. Just gives everyone a huge confidence boost going into the cup game tomorrow against Liverpool. some really good performances. I thought Jed Spence was outstanding up against Brian and Mbeumo. Deservedly got the man of the match award, and Mbeumo's been such a key player for Brentford this season. One of the best players in the Premier League, but Jed just really nullified him. And Kinski, I don't think really had much to do. I think one effort from Norgard, he might have been in the first half, that was straight down his throat, but nothing to really trouble him, which was surprising because you know what Brentford can do with their attacking plays. But Spurs on the whole just handled the game really, really well, and hopefully the start of a very good week in terms of the results on the pitch.
Yeah, it was a much needed win. It was everything Spurs needed to be in the game, really. Gritty, organised, compact. Kind of just another example of this kind of daft narrative that they can only play a certain way. They don't know to change it up and everything. That was an absolutely changed up team, the way they were playing. You had midfield duo kind of Bentancur and Basuma behind who was it started the first half? Oh, Kulusevski, wasn't it? Kulusevski was the 10 first half. It was like, it was not a flat 4-3-3 at all. It had a little bit more of a solid base to it. The fullbacks weren't flying on constantly and inverting or anything like that. Porro really wasn't getting forward that much. I think maybe because he had Mikey Moore ahead of him as well. Jed Spence had a bit more license because, you know, he's fresher right now. And yeah, it was really, really tactically, I thought Spurs won the game against Thomas Frank's side. Thomas Frank's side are just they're a remarkable team of giants. They really are. Just watching from some of the set pieces and looking at them, and they all look about 6'5", 6'6". There's so many big players in that team, and they were flinging in like set pieces. I think they put 30 crosses into the box. They were just constantly trying to find a way through, and Spurs just so many good performances there. Jed Spence, like you say, I asked Postecoglou about him after the game, and he said he just relishes playing the top wingers. He just loves it. He just loves the challenge, and we've seen that, you know, with Salah as well, and hopefully again with Salah, it would be lovely if he can do similar in Thursday night's game. But yeah, and Mbeumo's just like, you know, caused nightmares for so many players this season, and Jed dealt with him really well, nullified a lot of what he could do. He did well. I thought that Gray and Davies were both superb. Ben Davies talking Archie Gray through the game. Archie Gray revealed afterwards. Porro as well had the most defensive actions of anyone on the pitch. I think it was 21 defensive actions. And I think credit also, there's this thing about Spurs and set pieces, which does date back to last season, and it's constantly brought up, and you'll notice every time it's brought up, if Spurs do concede a set piece goal, which everyone does at some point, but whenever they do, you get lumped in these figures of over the last 2 seasons. It's like, yeah, we know last season they were rubbish. We know, we get it. They were terrible from set pieces. But this time around, the two of the assistant coaches, Nick Montgomery and Mile Jedinak, have worked for hours on the training pitches at Hotspur Way with the players, with the back line, trying to get them kind of organised, not only from defensive set pieces, but also attacking wise. And it has to be also noted that they're doing this without many of the key defenders, without some of their bigger, taller players as well, like Romero, Van der Ven, Solanke as well is a big presence, you know, when you're trying to do set piece work. And that leaves you with maybe slightly shorter players like Porro, like Davies, I suppose. Archie Gray, you're training to be a centre-back. It's like you're working with these players. Even Jed Spence, yeah, he's tall for a fullback, but he's only, I think, 6 foot. He's not like a towering giant. And they've done all of this work, and it's really worked well. I mean, you look at it, they've only conceded 6 goals from set pieces in the Premier League, which is only 2 more than Arsenal, I think it is. No, wait a minute. 6 goals. Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, yes. No, I've got this wrong. Got my ones around the wrong way around. 8. They've conceded 8. No, it's the other way around. I'm having a mare here. I'm actually mare here. Yeah, then they've scored 8 set pieces with Sonny's one, which is right up there among the top ones as well. It's only 2 fewer than Arsenal. That's what I was trying to say. Who everyone was saying are the set piece kings. You know, they've got 10. Spurs have got 8, and it's kind of not noticed. But defensively, yeah, they've only conceded 6 goals from set pieces in the Premier League, which is fewer than Arsenal and Bournemouth. Man U have conceded 11 from set pieces. Do you know how many Wolves have conceded from set pieces in the Premier League?
No, I don't know.
17.
Wow.
That is it's just amazing. So yeah, Spurs stats, they really kind of stack up nicely when it comes to set pieces, but I think everyone still has last season in their mind. But yeah, overall terrific performance. I thought it was a really good performance, exactly what they need, and hopefully was a kind of gritty performance, albeit with a lot of quality in that second goal. It was a really good goal. That maybe set them up nicely for the trip to Anfield, where they're going to have to defend really, really well.
Who's in your team then for Thursday night?
It's a really difficult one, that. We're waiting to find out kind of the latest on the likes of Van de Ven and Romero. So we don't know exactly where they're at and whether Van de Ven's kind of in a position to start this game, where he's at sharpness and fitness wise, and what's been going on. Obviously, we've seen all the social media rumors and things like that, and I've had a million different contrasting messages from various people about Van de Ven, but we'll get exactly what's happening from Postecoglou in his press conference in about 2 hours' time. I would probably go with Kinski in goal. I think I'd still go with Porro at right back, even though he must be absolutely knackered. Jed Spence at left back. I think probably right now, until we know exactly where Van de Ven's at, probably just going to go provisionally with Danso and Davies as the central defensive duo. I would go with Bentancur and Basuma again as a kind of a double pivot in the middle, with probably, I think I'd go with Bergvall ahead of them. I thought he was very good when he came on against Brentford, played a big part in that second half. Tough on Sarr, but I do think Sarr's had this injury that he's kind of been carrying, and I think maybe you also got to leave some players. I know it sounds mad, but you've got to leave some players for the Villa game, which is such a huge one as well. And then probably Son, Richarlison, and Decky. I think with Tel, I would maybe bring him in a little bit later from the bench, purely because he's come in a bit later. But what would you do?
Similar to yours, if Van de Ven's in a position to start, he starts with Danso. Then the only other alteration I put Tel in mine, but I suppose it depends what you want to do in midfield. If you want a more solid base with Bentancur and Basuma there, and then it may depend. You might want Decky out wide instead, and then use Tel as an impact sub. But Andrew's shown during his time at Tottenham, he will throw the new boys straight into the team. So potentially could be in there. And what a game for Tel to try and make an impact on his Tottenham debut with a place at Wembley up for grabs.
I know, but isn't it nice to have options? That's the thing. It's like, and also we're kind of not mentioning the fact that he said a lot of players about a week ago would be back in 7 days to 10 days. So you might find that suddenly that bench has a few unexpected returnees on there. Could Vicario be on the bench? Could he throw him back in entirely? It'll be interesting to see kind of who's there or thereabouts. Brennan Johnson, maybe. I don't know. We'll find out in the press conference pretty soon exactly who's back. But it might be the case that he doesn't have to have a bench full of inexperienced and kind of teenagers, with no disrespect to them, because they've been doing the job as well, especially in the Elfsborg game. But it might just be that finally, during games, he'll have more options to kind of do more later in games. So, it's just such a huge game. It's such an enormous game. And yeah, I never like my trips to Anfield. So we'll see how this one goes.
Yep. Can I just say before we go, we've not done a pod since last Monday, but just how good was last Thursday against Elfsborg? The academy players coming on and scoring, and so pleased for Dane Scarlett to score, because it's almost like 5 years since we first saw him in the team in the pre-season during lockdown, those behind closed door games, and it's just not really happened for him. And I've said to you previously, not on the pod, but out of all the academy players who would like to make it, it'd probably be Dane. So really good to see him score, and the same for Ajayi and Mikey Moore. And I think Miles's post-match interview with Dane in the review show said it all, like, we've been waiting for this moment for ages. So it was just, what a wonderful night it was. Probably, I think, come May, could be one of the highlights of the season. Hopefully there will be a couple of trophies to talk about, but I think that'll be right up there.
It's just so huge for the club as a whole, and the mood around the stadium was amazing. Everyone kind of understood what it meant for not only these three young players. I mean, Ajayi's goal was brilliant. All three goals are brilliant. For Ajayi to kind of come on and do that, probably maybe more so for the general fan coming a bit out of nowhere compared to, like you say, we've known Dane for a while, trying to fulfill his kind of potential and talent. With Damola Ajayi, he's been kind of working away for the under-18s, then the under-21s last season, and kind of getting his chance and scoring an absolute belter. I did wonder whether it might actually get him a loan move because of the eyes that would have suddenly been on him. And then Mikey Moore feeling like he didn't want to be left out and scoring his first goal as well. The chances of having one person score their first goal for the club on the night, then two, but actually to have three, it's just incredible. And it was brilliant. And so happy for them, but not only just for them, but also all the coaches and everyone and people and staff that have been involved in their journey over the years. You've got Wayne Burnett with the under-21s, Stuart Lewis, Bradley Allen, Jermaine Defoe when he was there as well for the under-18s. And that's just the coaches. You've got other people that play their part behind the scenes, like sports science people, nutritionists, even the people that drive them to games and everything. The people that do their kits, watch them. All of these people feel a part of their journey. And I think it won't probably sink in until the end of the season what a brilliant night that was for the academy, and what a kind of a big pat on the back for everything they're doing that was, to come in and having an eye like Postecoglou's face with each goal. He was like, what? He's like, you can even see, he was like, this is amazing. And that to do it all in front of that South Stand as well, the big 17,500 seater, it was great. It was a great occasion. Like you said, I absolutely know where you're coming from. It would be wonderful if there are bigger kind of moments as a whole for the fan base and the club, but to beat a special night is going to go some way to top kind of what happened for those three young players. It was lovely.
In terms of the academy, then, I know you just want to mention, you said at the start of the show there was a few more signings for the academy at the end of the window.
Yes. So they brought in Dan Batty, an attacking midfielder from Man City. These are all 18. They've all signed deals till 2028. So yeah, Dan Batty from Man City, a centre back from Liverpool in Luca Fernell Gill. Wonder whether he might end up having to be used at some point this season. Never know. Reece Alexander Russell Denny, he's a central midfielder from Chelsea, that he's come in as well. The under-21s desperately needed restocking as well. They've had a lot of players that have gone out on loan doing very well, and that's kind of left them in a bit of a weakened state. So you've got the three of those, and they've also made a signing kind of for the future as well. It's a record signing from the Irish League. I think it's talk about a £1.6 million figure potentially for Mason Melia, who's a 17-year-old forward. He can't join until January 2026, when he'll the next window after he'll be 18. Bit like the Vuskovic situation, I guess. And signed a deal apparently until 2031. So that kind of shows you exactly what they think about him. And Spurs have signed some very good kind of young Irish talents over the years, and hopefully he'll be the one that kind of breaks through and makes a big name of himself. But the Spurs side potentially in 2 to 3, 4 years is going to be ridiculous if they keep them all together. The amount of remarkable teenagers that they're stocking up at the club. It might be one of those where we're all having to go through a little bit of pain right now with Spurs, but they could end up with some team in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, they could. Promises to be a decent future if everything, stays on track, and there's some talents there. So plenty to look forward to for Tottenham fans. Right, we'll call it a day on today's podcast. We'll be back next week to talk about the Liverpool and Aston Villa Cup games, and hopefully a place in the Carabao Cup final in March. So as ever, thank you for listening in, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.